prioritize the topics that are targeting people who know they have a problem and are actively looking for a solution. Start creating content around this so that then your product is surfaced in the right moments in LLMs and also, of course, still Google. I'm Araminta Robertson, and this is SEO in 2026.
Araminta, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
My tip is now it's more important than ever to do bottom of the funnel content to help with appearing for the right topics, right keywords in Google, but also LLMs.
Superb. Okay, so shall we, to begin with, unpack from your perception, from your perspective, what is top, middle, and bottom of funnel type content, and how, what is the type of content to obviously be publishing on your website? So maybe starting off with top of the funnel content, how would you, as an overview, describe that?
Yeah, totally. And it's really important to make that distinction because people have different definitions of what each stage in the funnel is. So to me, top of the funnel content is someone who's not aware, is still very at the beginning of their journey in terms of making a purchase. So if we take an example, I work in the B2B payments and financial services sector. Say someone wants to work with a payment provider. They want to start accepting payments online. They're maybe, I don't know, an e-commerce or a merchant. At this stage of the funnel, they're just still doing a lot of research, like what do other companies do to accept payments online? Or what are the different business models that are available? They're almost looking for inspiration at this stage. They don't maybe even have a problem yet. They're just very early at the stage in their journey. Middle of the funnel, they are starting to be more aware that they have a problem. And they're starting to do research on types of payment providers. What kind of payments should they be accepting? What should the flow look like? They're trying to understand a bit better what the problem exactly is and what a solution could look. But maybe they're not even looking for a solution just yet. So they're still kind of at that middle of the funnel stage. And then bottom of the funnel is how I describe it, as someone who's aware they have a problem and are actively looking for a solution. So in this case, they're looking for things like top payment gateways, how to accept payments online with, I don't know, XYZ, with Stripe, for example, Stripe versus PayPal. And what's key here is that it's non-branded. So because often I say bottom of the funnel and people will think, oh, this is someone who already knows about our company and is trying to understand, I don't know, how the product works. That could be, but I would say that's that's after the buying journey because they're already aware of your brand. We're focused on non-branded bottom of the funnel, someone who doesn't know that your product exists and is actively looking for a solution to their problem.
Okay, so I like that explanation. So people that don't know they have a problem, think they might have a problem, and know they definitely have a problem.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. That's a good summary.
In terms of top of funnel content, what is happening to that, and why is that not a decent opportunity nowadays for SEOs?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree, or a lot of SEOs would agree, that top of the funnel is definitely not as effective as it used to be. Over the past few months, people have seen like a decrease in 30%, 34%, I think was the Ahrefs study in their traffic. And if you look at the specific pages that have lost that traffic, a lot of it is that top of the funnel, higher level content. And the reason is because of AI overviews. So now if you look up what is a payment provider, you'll get that big chunk at the top of the search results that kind of gives your answer. And because the answer is right there, you don't feel the need to scroll down and click into a website. And therefore, traffic is decreasing. And someone who, gets that answer so quickly is usually at the top of the funnel. Now, if you're at the bottom of the funnel and you're like Stripe versus PayPal, I'm actively looking for a payment provider, that is a complex buying decision. An AI overview isn't going to answer your question immediately. Stripe versus PayPal, yeah, it'll give you some high-level distinctions. But if you're really like, I need to understand how Stripe works, how PayPal works, what is the percentage fee that they charge, you're going to want a much more in-depth piece of content. And you're therefore a lot more likely to click into the results and just do more in-depth research. By the nature of bottom of the funnel, by the nature of the stage in the buying funnel, you're really doing a lot of research then. And therefore, bottom of the funnel means the person you're targeting is going to click, is going to do a lot more research, is going to, it's going to be a bigger percentage of your traffic, basically, because they need to read the content.
So are you saying that middle of funnel type queries are also consumed directly on LLMs, and middle of funnel isn't really an opportunity to be publishing on your website as well.
Yeah, middle of funnel is more murky, more complex. I'd say it really depends on the topic, and it depends on, like, there's some how-to maybe that are really straightforward. Like for me, middle of funnel is very how-to usually, like how to do this or types of this, like types of payment methods. Say we've got our merchant that wants to accept different types of payment methods. If you type that into Google, you'll get a good list on the AI overview, and maybe that's enough if you're like, I just need a quick overview. But if you're like, I need to actually understand which types make sense for us, you might then like dig in and click through. So I think for middle of the funnel, it's a bit more murky. Depends a little bit what you're looking for and the topic. But top of the funnel, I think, is a bit clearer that, yeah, the answers are just going to be straight in the AI overview or the LLM itself.
So bottom of funnel is where it's at in terms of publishing content on your website. But how do you uncover the correct queries to be targeting for bottom of funnel?
Yeah, so we have to remember who we're targeting here. In this situation, we're targeting someone who is aware they have a problem and is actively looking for a solution. And so that means you want to be trying to put yourself in their position. What is my ideal target audience? What are they thinking? What are their problems? As an agency who's external to the company, what we like to do is talk to the salespeople, talk to the people who are very in touch with the ideal customer. And we have a series of questions that we will ask the salesperson to really have a good understanding of what those potential problems could be and what they're thinking. What would they be typing into Google? So the questions are things like, first of all, who are your best customers? Who are the ones you want more of? What are their pain points? What are the other solutions that they compare you to? What are the triggers that would cause them to go into Google? What are the problems that they initially have, and how do they try and solve them at first? Who are the competitors that they compare you to? Like this whole lot of these kind of typical customer research questions that we will ask salespeople. And then based on those conversations, we then do a bit of research, maybe keyword research, topic research, and that's how we identify kind of the bottom of the funnel topics. And there's also some frameworks like the X versus Y. That's a classic one. The a product plus cheaper. That's a classic one. Or like a list post, top payment provider, something like that. So there are a few frameworks we can also play around with because we know that these work quite well as well.
And if you don't have salespeople or your salespeople don't want to talk to you, who's the next best person to talk to?
I would really push to talk to them. They will understand that this is how you need to do your research. If you can't do that, another good way is obviously just to interview your customers. If you can, obviously it's a lot harder for us, but if you can do that, interviewing them is the best. Interviewing your customers, maybe reading form submissions. That's one thing that we love to do as well. So going through your contact form submissions on your website, doing a survey, or even just like good old fashioned, go to an event where your ideal target audience is and ask questions. Like I always think that research or talking to your customers is like the number one thing a marketer should be doing constantly, because your marketing, it all depends on how well you understand your target audience. So there's a lot of things that can be done. It might have to be a few different things at the same time.
And what about looking at data such as Google Search Console, or people also ask on the SERP?
I mean, I think that's useful, but I think there's nothing like just talking to people because you can ask questions. Like to me, it's all about asking the questions. Like what are the triggers? What are the pain points? And having someone respond to that. The people also ask is interesting, but the qualitative information that you can get from talking to someone is, I think, irreplaceable at the moment, for sure.
And do you still look at keywords volume?
Yeah, we'll use like SEMrush to, once we've interviewed a salesperson, we've got lots of research, we'll then, try and think, okay, what are some of the keywords that they might be searching? So we still definitely do that. But I would say if a topic has come up time and time again, and where we know that this is a problem, and even if the volume says 0, we'll still go after it. And it often brings really good results. So keyword volume is still an interesting metric, but it's not the most important for sure.
Okay, so if you can't get keyword volume for a particular query, maybe it comes up as 0 for some reason in whatever keyword research tool that you're using, you potentially go for that one over a keyword volume of maybe 100 searches per month if you thought the 0 searches one was more relevant for your target market.
I mean, it's hard to say without knowing the keywords. I think if the one that's 0 volume is like we're 100% sure, then yes, we'll do both, probably. We'll do both. It's just about prioritizing which one we would do first. Depends on what stage the company's at. Like if they're very early in their SEO journey, maybe we'll prioritize the higher volume one because they need a bit of, rankings and traffic. But if they're quite late in their SEO, like they've already done a lot of content, the 0 1 could be quite interesting. So a lot of different factors there. It's hard to say without knowing the specific company.
Right. Okay. So that's how you go about selecting what topic to write about. How do you go about deciding what content to produce?
How we decide what content to produce, it would be like, let's prioritize first the topics, and then we would create content focusing on those topics. So say, for example, the Stripe versus PayPal, we're like, okay, someone looking this up would be in our target audience, bottom of the funnel. We would start by creating content targeting that keyword or that topic. So we'd start with the ones where we think the pain point is the highest, or maybe where the product has the biggest advantage as well. This is quite important. Like if it's a saturated market, a lot of competitors do the same, and you have one feature that no one else does, we would prioritize that topic as well. So prioritize the ones where the conversion rate would be highest or where the close rate would be fastest, for example. That's how we would prioritize the topics.
And in terms of incorporating elements like pain points, like use cases, product-specific posts, maybe top comparison types, or perhaps incorporating tables, how do you go about deciding upon the elements to incorporate as part of that article?
So that would all depend on the topic, to be honest, and the type of what we're going after. So if it's like a top X post, so it's top payment providers, top payment gateways, that would probably be, your classic. There would be a table, and then there'd be a classic like going through each competitor and explaining, the key features and how they work, and then obviously talking about the client's product. If it's a pain point or a use case, depends a little bit on the topic, but we would highlight a little bit, okay, this is probably the pain point that you're dealing with. This is why it's horrible and a pain. And here's how you could solve it. And then here's also how you could solve it with the product. So it will depend a little bit on the product, on the topic that we're targeting. But the goal is always create a piece of content that we know the reader, which engages the reader and answers their question, and also promotes the product, but in a way that's not salesy, in a way that's like actually genuinely helping them solve a problem. That's always the focus. And that's how these articles are designed to convert readers into leads or customers.
And how do you try to ensure that the article is surfaced at the right point in the buyer journey? For instance, do you just ensure that the internal linking is effective and that it's ready when someone searches for that particular query on Google? Or do you also incorporate it into other elements of your marketing, maybe such as retargeting, to try and actually appear from many different aspects of user behavior? Maybe when they're appearing on social media or something like that, then they've got an advert that drives people towards that particular bottom of funnel piece of content.
I think because of the nature of this content is bottom of the funnel, by the nature of it, of just creating that content, you're targeting people already at that stage in the buying journey. So for example, because we're creating an article about Stripe versus PayPal, we're targeting people who are doing research online on Google, looking up Stripe versus PayPal. So they're already at the bottom of the funnel. And the main way that we target them is via SEO, via Google. And that's how SEO is Google is such a fantastic distribution channel, because you can target the person exactly at that moment that they're ready to buy, which is the Stripe versus PayPal, the bottom of the funnel. So that's kind of the main dish. And then there's LLMs, which is another tactic or another key part of that.
Are you concerned that over the next 2 or 3 years that people are going to be consuming bottom of funnel content within LLMs, or do you think that's unlikely to be the case in the near future?
So they're already definitely consuming top of the funnel and middle of the funnel content within LLMs without clicking through. So this is why my whole tip is about why bottom of the funnel is more important now than ever, is because, say someone's looking up what is a payment, right? That's top of the funnel. They will consume that content within ChatGPT, and they don't need to click on a link on a source to get more details, because it's quite I don't want to say simple, but you can get that answer straight to ChatGPT. Now, say that same person is trying to understand whether they should use Stripe, PayPal, or another solution. So say they're going to spend a lot of time doing research on ChatGPT. When should I use Stripe? When should I use PayPal? What are some alternatives? And say they've done all that research in ChatGPT. The only way your solution will turn up is if you have created bottom of the funnel content that is along the lines of Stripe versus PayPal versus another solution, or alternatives to Stripe, alternatives to PayPal. And that is bottom of the funnel content. And this is why it's so crucial to create this content, is because without it, these LLMs and ChatGPT won't know to surface your tool. And this person who's done their research on ChatGPT, Stripe versus PayPal versus alternative, once they've done their research and they're ready to buy, they're still going to have to click on a link and head to your website and convert. And so bottom of the funnel content itself probably still going to be consumed in ChatGPT, but the actual buying action still needs to happen on the website. And that's why this type of content is more important than ever, is to make sure your product actually surfaces and converts the LLM user into a customer for you. I hope that makes sense, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. Araminta, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
So my key takeaway is prioritize the topics that are targeting people who know they have a problem and are actively looking for a solution. Start creating content around this so that then your product is surfaced in the right moments in LLMs and also, of course, still Google.
Araminta Robertson is Managing Director at Mint Studios. Find out more over at mintcopywritingstudios.com. Araminta, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.